Okay, so when we picture East Africa, say the early 1500s, it's easy to imagine it sort of untouched by the big global events happening elsewhere.
Right, almost isolated.
Exactly. But the sources we've looked at paint a really different picture, a region that was frankly burning.
Hmm.
This wasn't some quiet backwater. It was dynamic. There was this huge conflict underway, and it was surprisingly connected globally way before the scramble for Africa.
Absolutely. And that's where we're diving in today, focusing on a figure who just completely shatters that quiet image.
Ahmad Gurey.
Ahmad Gurey,
Yeah.
a leader who, led these powerful Muslim armies, came incredibly close to bringing down the entire Ethiopian empire, an ancient empire.
And even defeated European forces, the Portuguese.
Precisely. Beat them decisively. And what makes his story so critical, historically speaking, is that his war was one of the very first in Africa to heavily feature firearms and, importantly, large-scale foreign intervention.
So our mission today is really to cut through the complexity, pull out the key insights from all the source material you've gathered.
Get to the core of it.
Yeah, give you, the listener, a shortcut to understanding this really pivotal, but often, let's face it, untold chapter of history. We think there are some surprising facts, some real aha moments here.
Definitely.
Okay, let's unpack this. Who exactly was Ahmad Gurey? Ahmad ibn Ibrahim al-Ghazi, that's his full name, right? But better known as Ahmad Gurey, or sometimes Ahmad the Left-Handed.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And it's key, as you mentioned, he wasn't born a prince or a sultan, no royal blood.
Right, so where did he come from?
He emerged as a military figure from the region that's roughly modern-day Somalia. His background, his entire life really, was shaped by that constant tension, the friction between Christian Ethiopia and the Muslim sultanates surrounding it.
So how did he go from just being a military figure to the commander? What was his rise like?
Well, it was fast, really fast.
Dang
The
it.
sources highlight his tactical brilliance and apparently just natural leadership. He inspired loyalty.
Okay.
So by 1529, maybe a bit earlier, he's effectively taken full command, not just of a unit, but the entire military force of the Adel Sultanate.
And he had a clear goal.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was huge. He wasn't interested in just raiding the borderlands. His objective was, well, revolutionary for the time. Break Ethiopia's Christian kingdom entirely, expand Muslim rule right into its heartland, the highlands. The singular driving ambition.
Wow, so that ambition needed a strategy to match. And this wasn't just raiding, you said.
No, this was full-scale invasion. He wasn't messing around.
And that leads us to the Battle of Shimbra-Kure in 1529. His forces, a mix of Somali, Afar, Harari warriors, right?
Correct. The coalition.
They defeated a much larger Ethiopian army, significantly larger by most accounts.
They did. And that victory is stunning on its own, but the way they won, that's where it gets really interesting.
There's something else at play beyond numbers and tactics.
Exactly. Firearms, specifically matchlock rifles,
Okay, guns. Where did they come from?
supplied by the Ottoman Empire. This is crucial. It wasn't just a few random muskets showing up.
Right.
Sources are clear. This was the first major large-scale deployment of firearms in sub-Saharan African warfare.
But hadn't the Portuguese brought guns to the coast earlier?
They had, yes. Portuguese explorers in the Indian Ocean had guns. But Ahmad's connection, his alliance with the Ottomans, that gave him something different. It gave him superior access, more weapons, and, critically, Ottoman expertise. Training,
So he had trained riflemen.
disciplined units of riflemen. That fundamentally changed how battles were fought in the region. It was a technological leap.
And the impact was immediate, wasn't it? The speed of his campaign after that.
Astonishing, yeah. For the next decade, his army just rolled across Ethiopia, taking major cities, pushing ever deeper.
And there were conversions happening alongside the military victories?
Yes, significant conversions. It was a political, military, and religious conquest all rolled into one. And by, say, 1535, Ethiopia, this ancient Christian kingdom, was genuinely on the verge of total collapse.
Right on the edge. So with Ethiopia in such dire straits, what was Europe doing, particularly Portugal?
Well, Portugal had skin in the game. They'd had ties with Ethiopia for a while.
They saw it as a fellow Christian kingdom.
Exactly. A Christian ally, an outpost, really, in a region increasingly dominated by Muslim powers. Losing Ethiopia to Ahmad Gurey's forces, that would have been a disaster for Portugal. Politically, religiously, strategically.
A major blow. So they couldn't just stand by.
No, they felt they had to intervene. So in 1541, they acted. They sent a force, not huge, about 400 soldiers.
But well-armed.
Oh yes, musketeers, led by Cristobal da Gama,
Vasco da Gama's son.
the very same. They landed up in Massawa on the coast and marched inland to join up with what was left of the Ethiopian resistance.
So this sets the stage for a pretty historic confrontation.
Absolutely. What happens next is basically one of the very first major showdowns between a European military force armed with guns and a powerful African Muslim army also armed with guns on the continent itself. A really pivotal moment.
So how did that go initially? Did the Portuguese firepower make a difference?
At first, yes. The combined Portuguese-Ethiopian forces actually had some success. They won a few early battles.
But Ahmad Gurey adapted.
He did. He was known for his tactical flexibility. And then the tide turned dramatically. In 1542, Ahmad's forces managed to ambush da Gama's troops.
A successful ambush.
Very successful. They captured Cristóvão da Gama himself, and, well, they executed him.
Wow. They killed the Portuguese commander. Surely that was the end. Ahmad Gurey wins, Portugal is defeated, Ethiopia falls.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? It looked like the final nail in the coffin for Ethiopia. But history takes strange turns.
What happened?
Later on, not immediately after, but in another battle, a skirmish near Lake Tana, Ahmad Gurey himself was killed.
How?
Shot by an Ethiopian soldier. Just like that. A single shot in the heat of battle.
Incredible. So what did his death mean for the war?
Everything. It completely broke the back of his army's morale. This force that had seemed invincible, held together by his leadership and vision, it just disintegrated.
The Yellow Army collapsed.
Pretty much unraveled. And crucially, the Ottomans, his external backers, they didn't step in to prop things up after he was gone.
Yeah.
There was no successor with his kind of authority or perhaps the same level of Ottoman support.
So that gave Ethiopia an opening.
Exactly. It allowed the Christian kingdom slowly, painstakingly, to start regaining territory. The immediate threat was over. The war essentially ended there. Ethiopia survived. But as the sources really stress, it was a very close call, a near-death experience for the empire.
So reflecting on all this incredible rise and sudden fall, what really makes Ahmad Gurey stand out? What's his legacy? What should we take away?
I think there are three really key things that set him apart, based on what we've read.
Okay.
First, gunpowder warfare. He didn't just use guns. He actively imported Ottoman military technology and expertise. He trained riflemen, used engineers. This wasn't just reacting to Europe. It was proactive military innovation within Africa, connected to global networks. It really challenges that old narrative of Africa as just a passive recipient.
Right, that's a major point. What's the second?
Second, the sheer scale of his success against Ethiopia. He came so close to completely wiping out a major ancient Christian kingdom, an independent power for centuries. And he did it with a disciplined, multi-ethnic Muslim army that had considerable local backing. That made his campaign uniquely threatening to the established order.
Okay, innovation near total victory. What's the third differentiator?
He forced Europe's hand. Portugal didn't just send a few advisors. They sent a dedicated military expedition under a high-profile commander. That shows his campaign wasn't seen as just some local skirmish or tribal revolt.
No, it was viewed as a major regional power shift.
Exactly. A geopolitical event that directly threatened European interests and religious solidarity. That intervention itself underlines his significance.
So after his death, the immediate consequence was the weakening of the Adil Sultanate.
Yes. Without his leadership, and perhaps because the Ottomans didn't sustain their support at the same level, Adil suffered from internal conflicts and declined. This, in turn, allowed Ethiopia to claw back its territory.
But the war itself left deep marks, didn't it? It wasn't just a political shift.
Oh, absolutely. The sources speak of terrible devastation, cities destroyed, huge loss of life, tens of thousands killed on all sides.
And the religious dimension.
That became much worse. The war massively deepened the animosity and mistrust between Muslims and Christians in the Horn of Africa. Scars that arguably linger in some ways even today.
And militarily. You mentioned the guns.
Right. That's the other huge legacy. Firearms were now central to warfare in the region. Everyone had to adapt. Local armies, Ethiopian forces, everyone else, they had to acquire guns, learn new tactics, train differently.
So warfare was fundamentally changed.
It would never be the same again in the Horn of Africa. That technological shift, spurred by Ahmad Gurey's campaign, was permanent. Which does raise a pretty important question, doesn't it?
It does. Given how impactful this all was, the military innovation, the near collapse of an empire, the European intervention, why isn't Ahmad Gurey, a household name? Why isn't this story better known, taught more widely in schools?
It's a great question, and the sources suggest a few reasons. For one, European historians, for a long time, tended to downplay it.
How so?
Well, they might focus more on the Portuguese side, framing it as Portuguese heroism against the odds, Or sometimes they portrayed Ahmad's armies almost as sort of barbaric invaders, fitting older colonial narratives. It didn't fit neatly into a simple story of European dominance.
Okay, so European perspectives skewed the story. What about within the region itself?
Well, in Ethiopia and Somalia, the story is definitely known, but it's often heavily politicized. Understandably, perhaps. In Ethiopian memory, Ahmad Gurey is often cast as a destroyer, responsible for immense suffering.
And in Somali memory,
He's frequently seen as a hero, a champion of Islam, a symbol of resistance against Ethiopian dominance. There's even a prominent monument dedicated to him in Mogadishu. So you have these competing national narratives.
which makes teaching a balanced, objective history difficult, I imagine.
Very difficult. Modern political tensions in the Horn certainly don't make it easier. But as the sources show us, beneath the politics, his story is absolutely vital. It's a powerful example of early African resistance, of sophisticated military innovation happening within Africa, and a stark reminder of how global politics were shaping local wars long before we usually think.
So Ahmad Gurey, he didn't conquer the world, clearly. But he came astonishingly close to completely redrawing the map of East Africa.
He really did. Changed it forever in many ways.
His war pulled Europe into a direct military conflict in the heart of Africa. It revolutionized warfare there with gunpowder, and it reshaped the political and religious landscape for generations. That's quite an impact.
It's immense. You could argue he was one of the very first Muslim leaders in Africa to demonstrate, on such a grand scale, that organized resistance backed by modern military tech couldn't just challenge, but could genuinely shake established empires, both local and indirectly European ones.
And that's not myth or legend.
No, that's history, detailed in the sources, and it really makes you think, doesn't it? What other stories like this, these pivotal moments of non-European power and innovation, are still sort of buried, still waiting to challenge our standard view of how global history unfolded.